Welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, ready to go over this two-game slate at DraftKings for May 7th, a Tuesday, and I'm ready to find one at that. Hopefully you did well yesterday. I did not win all the money despite playing Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson together. They both went off. I did talk about them in yesterday's slate and my Reddit post. They were two of my favorite plays of the entire slate. My value plays did not hit quite as well, and of course, in a lot of my lineups, I did suggest a nice strategy of pivoting off a mega chalk Brunson, who ended up being 70% owned, and going with Jokic. But that didn't work out because the Nuggets got blown out by 26 points at home to go down 2-0 in the series. I really just thought Denver would show up for this and even the series up, even without Rudy Gobert there. That didn't happen. So you win some, you lose some. Hopefully Hart helped you cash at least. And if you had Brunson in your lineup, hopefully you did okay. As is always the case, it's on to the next one. If you're new to this channel, this video is sponsored by DFS Hero. You can try it out for yourself if you're in search for a new lineup optimizer for projections and ownership and all kinds of fun stuff like that, Sims and all that stuff. You can check them out, 15% off discount in our link in the video description below. All right, so yeah, also if this video helps you, please give it a like. That helps us a lot. And also subscribe to the channel, helps the community grow and lets you know when we put out more videos. Hopefully we'll put out another MLB video later today. Please, when you check out those videos, also give them likes. They're a little lower on the view side compared to NBA. NBA has been cooking. So if you do that, that helps them out a little bit, and appreciate it. Honestly, appreciate all you guys. Appreciate it. We got 181 subscribers and we're growing. Appreciate all the comments and the feedback and anybody saying if they did, had a big win or had any success with us. That's why I do it. I want to help you guys win. And if I can win too along the way, that'd be great. I haven't had a lot of success the past week or so. A little bit of success in MLB. I had a couple near takedowns. A little bad luck kept me from some takedowns, but it's been okay the past couple of weeks. But the last couple of days with NBA, not so much. So let's right the ship. And let's get it going here. Cavs at Celtics at TD Garden. Cavs are massive 12-point dogs. That makes sense. Boston tends to wreck everybody, especially at home. And this game has a 208.5 total. So for DFS purposes, if we could, we would probably be avoiding it. If this was on a big 6, 8, 10-game slate, we would be like, F this game to hell. We want nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, it's a 2-game slate. You got to have one share of this game at a minimum. And for ownership purposes, you might want a little bit more than that. So let's just look at the plays and see how we should feel about it. First of all, I've touted Donovan Mitchell on Friday, and he scored 50 fucking points. So hopefully you followed that advice and played him. He comes in with a 44-point fantasy projection. Another thing to note, by the way, it is very early in the morning. I like to push this out early so you guys get a little help and you can integrate it into your own process. But the ownership fluctuates. Early in the morning, I looked at it yesterday before the video I did, and the ownership was not really fully on Brunson. And there's some other, like Jamal Murray was like 50% owned or something. And then like a couple hours later when I did the video, the ownership completely flipped. So Brunson was mega chalk. Jamal Murray was 13% owned. So apparently that ended up being the correct way to go. But even though the result went against the strategy I wanted yesterday, those kind of things are always important to think about. And what I'm really talking about is leverage. And especially on a tiny slate, you can't get a lot wrong. You got to eat the right chalk for sure. But when you can leverage a low-owned stud against a chalky stud, that is something we should at least consider doing. So today, Donovan Mitchell, for right now, 25% owned. That is a pretty low-owned stud in my opinion. So that looks like a pretty fun leverage opportunity. So I like him again. They're massive underdogs on the road. The Celtics play good defense, so all of that checks out as far as being negative for Donovan Mitchell, but he's still a good price. He's too cheap for who he can be. He did have success in this series during the regular season. In 2 meetings, he had 30 real points per game with 47.8 fantasy points per game. So Donovan Mitchell can score on Boston. And a big key for the Cavs here is going to be their three-point shooting. Boston is without Kristaps Porzingis, so their interior defense may drop a bit. But the best way to attack them throughout the season has been from the three-point line. They give up, I think, the 23rd, or they rank 23rd in three-point attempts allowed, and they rank 15th in three-point makes allowed. So they're allowing teams to shoot threes, and they're actually making them at a league average clip. So that's probably the way we want to attack Boston. Even without Porzingis, I don't know if I really want to go heavy at like Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen if he's in. I'll get to them in a second. But my point is, I think Mitchell's going to have a good game here. I think he's going to have a good series. So if he's not going to be owned, I'm very interested in Donovan Mitchell again. Drew Holiday is obviously going to be draping one of these dudes. He could end up taking on the assignment of covering Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's pretty matchup proof, so I'm not that worried about that. I would just kind of hope / assume he's going to cover Darius Garland, and that would kind of take down Garland's ceiling for me. Garland is a good price at 6.4K. His projection is not great, but he's not chalky. So if you need just like a lower tier mid-range guy to round out your lineup at 6.4K, you could do a lot worse than Darius Garland. Just because he's a double-double threat, he can do a little bit of everything, and he's not very expensive. As far as the bigs, Jarrett Allen is once again questionable. He missed the last few games against Orlando. If he's in at 6.9K, he's absolutely someone who we can consider. His projection sucks, but there's no Porzingis down low. It's just Al Horford. So I think Jarrett Allen could have a little bit of success in this series. He did average 34 fantasy points per game in 3 meetings with Boston, almost averaged a double-double. So, he's not going to crush, but at 6.9K, I think he can get there for sure if he's in. If he's out, you can absolutely consider Evan Mobley, but he's getting to the point here at 7.6K for me that he's getting a bit pricey for a pretty tough matchup on the road with blowout risk. And the funny thing is he's 41% owned. That's his projected ownership. So with an 11% boom rating, it's all about like, can Evan Mobley soak up Jarrett Allen's, extra usage and go off? This really isn't the spot to bank on that happening, and his price is elevated. So for me, I'm going to look for ways to leverage that ownership. That could be wrong. It could be another Brunson thing, when I went with Jokic last night for like half my lineups. But I think it makes sense. Is Evan Mobley in a vacuum a good play if Jarrett Allen is out? Absolutely he is. He is technically too cheap for the role he would possess and the upside he would offer. But at 41% ownership in this spot, I will gladly look another way. Worth noting, in the one game he played against Boston, he only had 20 fantasy points. So he did struggle. That doesn't tell us much. It's just one game and it's the regular season. But I'll leave that there for you to decide. Going back to the point of Boston allowing a lot of three-point attempts, I actually like Max Strus a little bit here. Max Strus is very hit or miss. He's very scoring dependent. But in 2 games against Boston, he averaged 34 minutes and 23 fantasy points per game. So it's all about, is he going to stay on the floor? Because he's obviously a bit of a defensive liability. And is he going to hit his shots? He's been kind of hot in the last 3 games, putting up 10-plus real points in 3 in a row to help Cleveland win that series in the first round. So maybe he shows up here, and at 5.4K, I don't think that's a huge risk to take. The best part, he's only going to be 18% owned, at least right now. If that ownership sticks, I think that's a fine value to try in a spot where he's going to be needed and he's going to get his opportunities. Karis LeVert at 4.5K. He went from 7 minutes in game 6 to 30 minutes in game 7. I don't know how much we can trust him in his role right now, but if we're going to get 25 to 30 minutes from Karis LeVert, I like him quite a bit at 4.5K. He's just a little bit volatile right now is all. As far as deep values for Cleveland, Isaac Okoro had 33 minutes in game 7. He had 20-plus minutes in his previous 3 games. Marcus Morris lost his role in game 7 there. So, yeah, I guess I would say Okoro would be a viable punt if you want to do that. The only problem is Okoro doesn't really do much. He's not a good per minute guy. But if he's going to get 25 to 30 minutes at 3.7K, he has to be in your player pool. 2 games going to 2 games, right? All right, so in summary, really like Donovan Mitchell at his current ownership. Probably leveraging the Mobley ownership, and I do like Max Strus, surprisingly, a good deal. On the Boston side, obviously the Suds are at risk of not playing the full game if this 12-point spread holds, but we can't play that game, especially on 2-game slate. The reality is Cleveland is not a fun matchup. Both these teams are top 6 in defensive efficiency, and both these teams are relatively slow paced. The game total tells us all we need to know. This is really not the game to stack. I think 1 or 2 pieces from either side is totally fine, but stacking up Boston and Cleveland doesn't make sense to me. In fact, they're kind of owned right now. So if Jason Tatum coming at 33% and Jaylen Brown's at 35%, and like I said before, Evan Mobley at 41%, if these guys are all going to carry a lot of ownership, why are we stacking up the worst game of the 2-game slate? So that's just where my head is at. That being said, Jason Tatum does come in at a decent price at 9.7K, 50-point fantasy projection, 26% boom rating. On a slate where you're going to have to consider Luka or no Luka, Tatum is very viable. Both Tatum and Spida look like really nice price studs. So I like them fine. That said, I prefer Jaylen Brown to Jason Tatum. The 7.9 price is just too nice with Porzingis out. So I feel like his projection feels a little bit low. And while he's probably going to be about the same amount owned as Tatum, I just think he's the cheaper, better. He's the better value. He's the better play. Derek White looks good at 6.7K. I mean, I might continue to fade him if his ownership spikes at 23%. He's viable. He's a fine price. He's been playing really well. And obviously, once again, Porzingis being out just opens up usage as a whole. But he's not going to stay this hot forever. And like I said, Cleveland is not exactly a soft matchup. So if the ownership spikes for Derek White, I will gladly go away from that. One way to do that would be Drew Holiday. He's $700 or $800 cheaper, about half the ownership, and just projects 6 points less. So he's not a high usage guy. He's not a fun guy to play for DFS, but Drew Holiday would be an interesting leverage play on Derek White for sure. Al Horford at 5.7K looks like a borderline core play for me with Porzingis out. People might react to his game, his last game a little bit too much because he didn't play above 30 minutes due to a blowout. So I'm not going to overreact to that. I think he's a pretty good play at 5.7. As far as value, if you think this game is going to blow out, you can look at Luke Cornett, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard. Peyton Pritchard would be the first guy I'd look at there at 4.2K. But I wouldn't feel absolutely amazing about any of those guys because I don't really want to play for the blowout on a 2-game slate. I was checking the minutes for some of these guys. Yeah, these other guys like Xavier Tillman, even like I said, Luke Cornett. Oh, Luke Cornett got 18 minutes in the last game. It's hard to judge that because it was a blowout. So I would try to stay away from the value. Pritchard is the one who actually gets pretty consistent run off the bench, even in the playoffs. So he's as far down as I'd go for Boston, probably. All right, on we go to Dallas and OKC. The Mavs are 3.5-point road dogs. This game has a 218 total. In terms of pace of play, the Dallas and Thunder both are top 7 in pace. So this is just, hands down the game to stack if you want to just fully stack a game. Luka is only coming in at 32% owned, which is a little bit interesting. He's 12K. In 2 meetings with OKC, he averaged 74 fantasy points per game. Kyrie averaged over 50 fantasy points per game in this series during the regular season. Let's see. Yeah, 55 in 2 games of his own. So, I mean, they both look great. It's an up-tempo matchup. It's just a way better spot than the Boston-Cleveland game. Kyrie is a pretty good leverage play on Luka. He is $3,000 cheaper, and he projects decently. And he's 19% owned compared to 32% owned. That's fine. I have no problem with getting into Kyrie, but Luka is just a smash play in this game. OKC can defend pretty well, but I don't think they're going to be able to do much to stop Luka. The only problem is there's a lot of solid mid-range guys in this slate, so it's hard to fully commit to Luka. I think I'm probably going to get there and pay for Luka on this slate. Just because I'm not super interested in paying for Tatum in a slower game, and I'm not really going for Kyrie on this slate necessarily. So I think it's going to be kind of easy to get to Luka and feel pretty good about it. And if you want to leverage that with Kyrie, nothing wrong with that. PJ Washington is a minutes play for me. He's not really been getting it done lately. He hasn't topped 30 fantasy points in any of his last 4 games, but he's had 30-plus minutes in all those games. So he's out there shooting shots, getting rebounds, all that stuff, 5.8K, totally fine play. He does have a bit of a ceiling if he can pop off. He is pulling 24% ownership, so that could deter you slightly. I mean, I guess in the same price range, it looks like Horford for the moment is going to be less owned, so I guess I'd go Horford there. that's my call for that one. As far as the bigs go, Daniel Gafford has had success in the series. It's not really the best matchup, but he averaged 32 fantasy points against the Thunder over 3 meetings. Right now, he is only 8% owned, and he comes in with a 21-point fantasy projection. So, yeah, I like Daniel Gafford a lot at 4.5K at that ownership for sure. Derek Lively is also worth noting. Very similar ownership, very similar price, slightly cheaper. You can go Derek Lively if you want. They're pretty much splitting the center minutes, but I just prefer Gafford. I think he's got a better ceiling. Derek Jones Jr. looks awesome at 4.8K. Actually, no, that's not correct. Sorry about that. I forgot Tim Hardaway Jr. is back. So Derek Jones Jr. is not going to be as appealing. That could be a trap. He's coming in with 28% ownership. He had been playing big minutes with THJ out, but Tim Hardaway Jr. is back and available for this game. So Derek Jones Jr. is still going to start, and he could still push for 30 minutes. I think he's a fine play at 4.8K, but I do not think he's the lock that he has been in recent slates. It's unclear exactly how much back Tim Hardaway Jr. will be or how much they'll lean on him. But at 3.8K, I'm willing to roll the dice on Tim Hardaway for sure. He's not carrying ownership yet. His projection's low, and people are going to be, a bit weary of trusting him. So I like him. I think that's a fine GPP play for sure. With him back, Josh Green, Dante Exum, all those other punt guys for the Mavs are not in play at all. Maxi Kleba is out. So I guess that would help solidify DJJ a little bit, as well as Gafford and Derek Lively. So those guys remain good plays, like I said. And maybe that helps us feel a little bit better about Tim Hardaway Jr., also getting his usual minutes too. All right, on the other side, OKC, the play of the slate to me, 100% is SGA. 9.1K, 50-point fantasy projection, 36% boom rating against the Mavs. Pretty sure he's torched them on the year. Well, not really, but he hasn't really needed to because a couple of those he played them 4 times. 2 of the games were blowouts, but on the year in 4 games, 41 fantasy points per game. So not crushing them, but just fine. That said, though, we know he has a ceiling, quite a significant one. The matchup is pretty good. The Mavs ranked 19th against point guards on the year. We know he's a good per minute guy. And he's only coming in at 26% ownership. So if that ownership is going to flock over to Tatum, I would gladly pay $600 less for SGA 100%. Love SGA today. Love this game in general, as I think everybody should. Jalen Williams at 7.2K is too cheap. He's coming in as mega chalk at 53%. Do what you will with the mega chalk. It doesn't matter. If a guy is that chalky, you can always consider a pivot or a leverage. And obviously he has one on his own team in Chet Holmgren, $400 cheaper and not even close to the same ownership. Projection similar, boom rating similar. But Jalen's pulling 53% and Chet is pushing for 38. So if everybody is playing Jalen, you can just go play Chet. And if Jalen crushes and Chet sucks, so be it. That's just probably what I'll do. Is Jalen a good play? Absolutely. But you don't need to play those guys together. And I just think that's immediate leverage. So that's probably what I'm going to do. You can absolutely eat the Jalen chalk, fade the somewhat chalky Chet, and go do something else. It's up to you. Josh Giddey has actually been getting run. So if that continues at 5.6K, he's a totally fine value play. He's only carrying 20% ownership too. So like people are still worried about his minutes. If that's going to be the case, Giddey is a pretty good guy to look to. I feel a little bit better about Lou Dort, which feels gross, but he's cheaper at 4.7K. He's going to play the whole game as much as Luka is going to allow him as far as foul trouble is concerned, just because he's probably going to be covering Luka the whole time. He's a 3-and-D guy. If he doesn't hit his shots, he's gonna fail miserably. But he's 34% owned for a reason, because he's going to play a crap ton of minutes and he's going to get a few outside shots. And obviously he can get like ancillary stats, steals, rebounds, blocks. So yeah, he's one of my favorite values on the board. I'm not really going too much deeper for OKC than that, just because they are, even in the playoffs, they can be a little bit flippant with their rotation minutes. So yeah, I mean, Gordon Hayward 4 minutes in the last game. Kason Wallace 14 minutes. I mean, it's like all these random dudes are getting like 14 minutes or something. You just don't know who to trust. So you can take that gamble like on Aaron Wiggins or something at 3.5K if you really want to. I'm not very interested in doing that. All right, so as a whole, I think I'm paying for Luka tonight. My goal is to get Luka with SGA across from him. I think the ownership for both these guys is too low. I do expect it to spike considerably before we get to lock. So definitely update your optimizers and get updated ownership so you can make those leverage play calls. And then if we can work in like Spida at low ownership, that could be kind of interesting too. I'm definitely looking to stack the Dallas Thunder game more. I'm not really necessarily fearing the Boston game for blowout purposes. It's just a pace play. It's just too much defense and slow pace game. It's not very appealing at all. I'd definitely be looking to leverage the Evan Mobley chalk, and I don't think I'd be eating the Jason Tatum chalk. I'd much rather play a low-owned SGA and or pay up for Luka on this slate. So that does it for me. Hopefully this breakdown helps you a little bit. And per usual, you can apply this to your own process and flip it and tweak it and do what you need to do to build your lineups in the best way possible. Hopefully I add to that. And if this video helps you in any way, give it a like, please, and also subscribe to the channel. Really helps me out. Anyways, thanks for watching and good luck.